Do not mess with Gloria Pritchett. Sofia Vergara is on another winning streak, and this time it has to do with her genes. No, not her pants, but her genetic material. Stick around. You've probably seen the news or watched TMZ's latest scoop about the 6 years of custody battle over Sofia Vergara and Nick Loeb's frozen embryos and his attempt to use them. And it's a wrap. The court ruled no, not without her consent, Nick. Now, it may sound super confusing unless you happen to be familiar with embryo creation versus rights to the embryos created versus the rights of the people who contributed in the creation of the blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about all that. If you're tempted to Google it even, just please don't. My name is Corlandos Scott, and I am an assisted reproductive technologies attorney, which basically means I've dedicated my practice to helping people grow their family and have babies through the help of assisted reproductive technologies like IVF. In this video, we'll look at how this started, what happened legally, and why this may matter to you if you're considering IVF or any other assisted reproductive technology. Let's jump in. Here's the rundown. Back in 2013, Sophia and Nick pulled their genes together to create embryos, build a family, come up with weird celebrity baby names like Celery or Rhaegar or Cornucopia. Well, that is until the dream ended when they split up in 2014. Well, when they created the embryos, they signed the type of standard consent form with the fertility clinic that most everyone signs. The consent form loosely covered what could be done with the embryos. It mentioned that the embryos would be destroyed, thawed, and discarded if one of the parties died. But it didn't mention what would happen if they just broke up. By the way, here's a pro tip. A clinic's consent form is not necessarily the same thing as a contract between you and your partner. More on that later. So, fresh off of a disappointing breakup with an international heartthrob, Nick did what any normal guy wouldn't do. He tried to have her baby. Yeah, he went to Louisiana courts to fight for the right to use the embryos to have a baby. And he argued that the embryos should be recognized as people with the right to have a chance to be born. And he lost. So then Nick brought his talents to La La Land, the city of angels, Los Angeles, the state of California, arguably the friendliest state in the country for assisted reproduction, and he lost again. But why though? Why did Nick lose? It comes down to two things. First is the important consideration of the best interest of the child. Now, this is one of the court's foundation principles for making custody-related decisions. What would be best for the child? Now, Sophia said in one of her past interviews that because she's been working so hard for 20 years and did everything she's done to get where she is now, she's afraid that Nick would later use the child or children to take advantage of her career and use it to his advantage. Well, I know what you're thinking. Hey, that's not cool. That's definitely not in any child's best interest, right? But it just coincidentally also seems to serve Sophia's best interest too, huh? But that may be just coincidental. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it makes a lot of sense. You probably wouldn't want your child to be used like a pawn or a ticket for an ex to crawl into your business or your life, right? It's like, come on. Let's act like any normal set of exes and just stalk each other on social media. But second, and equally, if not more important, the reason Nick lost is due to one of the most important principles that lie at the center of any kind of relationship, professional, romantic, business, and anything else where at least two people are involved and an important decision needs to be made. What is that? Consent. Yeah, you've heard about it. I'm sure you'll agree that before any two people are sexually intimate, that they probably should both consent to that encounter, right? Well, I'll go out on a limb and say that it makes sense for the same rule to apply when you're turning someone into a parent. It should probably require their consent. They created the embryos together. Why do I repeat myself? Because together is exactly the point. It took both of them to create the embryos, so it only makes sense that it takes an explicit agreement from them both in order to use the embryos to have a baby. In essence, it takes the agreement of both would-be parents. Together, they can either agree to disagree or agree not to disagree. But either way, they need to agree. You got that right. All right, just so you know, courts across the nation, with the exception of some places like Louisiana, classify embryos as property rather than persons. And in similarly decided cases, the non-wanting to be a parent person argues that they should not be forced to become a parent against their will. Now, I can't say that I disagree. Ultimately, you can't unbring a child into the world. So what does this mean to you? Well, before I tell you what all this has to do with you, if you're getting anything out of this video, if you're enjoying it, if you like it, go ahead, smash that like button. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. I'll keep you up to speed on all things assisted reproduction. So why does all of this matter to you? Well, if you're considering doing a round of IVF for yourself, your spouse, you, your fiance, your partner, you need to consider what you'll do with any leftover genetic material. And you need more than just the clinic consent form, for crying out loud. Your clinic consent form is a directive from you and your partner directed to the clinic, instructing them, the clinic, of what to do. But it is not, and I repeat, it is not a well-articulated understanding between you and your partner about what you agree to do or not to do with your joint genetic material. So please, for the love of Joe Manganiello, consult an attorney and get a game plan or estate plan for your leftover genetic material. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Corlandos, of course you're saying get an attorney because you are an attorney. Fair, but it doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Now, had Nick and Sophia consulted with me prior to their round of IVF, they could have saved 6 torturous years of dealing with their ex, and God only knows how much in legal fees and heartache. In all seriousness, when you're undergoing IVF or surrogacy, you're caught up in the emotions and the excitement of growing your family, and rightfully so. But that's also the exact moment when you're making some of the most crucial decisions of your life and of your romantic relationship. Just ask Nick and Sophia. So take your time and get some advice outside of your doctor's office. Now listen, if you're even thinking about going through the surrogacy process, you need to make sure you have a game plan. So click the link below to get my free surrogacy roadmap, where I walk you through exactly what to expect in the surrogacy process. So go ahead, click the link, and I can't wait to show you what to expect.